The streetlights hummed faintly above the cracked pavement, spilling pale light onto the quiet stretch of road that led toward Marcus's house. The air smelled faintly of rain, though the sky was clear, a false promise that often came with the southern nights. Marcus carried a brown paper bag in one arm, the edges soft from moisture, a carton of milk shifting against the side. He had always liked this time of evening, when most people were home, when the world slowed down enough to let his thoughts drift without purpose. The grocery store clerk had called him, "Sir," the way young people did when they sensed something disciplined about a man. Marcus had smiled politely, paid for his things, and stepped back into the fading light. It was supposed to be an ordinary night. The rumble of the truck came from behind him, deep, uneven, the kind of growl that spoke of an old engine and too much adrenaline behind the wheel. At first, he didn't turn. Cars passed through here all the time. But the sound didn't pass. It slowed. He heard laughter, sharp and mocking, drifting out through the open windows. A voice yelled something unintelligible, just noise and swagger. Then, clearer, a word that sliced through the quiet, a word Marcus had heard too many times in his life. It didn't make him flinch, not anymore. It just made the world around him feel a little colder. He walked on, steady and unhurried. The sound of tires scraping gravel followed him like an echo. He knew better than to engage. He'd learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting unless they had to be. "Hey," another voice called, younger, nervous under the bravado. "You deaf or something?" Marcus didn't answer. His boots scuffed softly against the sidewalk. Somewhere behind him, the truck's engine revved again, closer now. The roar filled the space between the buildings. Then a bottle shattered near his feet, glass skittering across the ground and catching the glow of the streetlights. That was when he stopped. He turned slowly, setting the grocery bag down with deliberate care. The paper crackled softly. The truck's headlights glared into his face, bleaching the color from the world. He couldn't make out their features, just outlines of movement, a cluster of young men, maybe 4 or 5, all tension and noise. One leaned out the passenger window, holding an empty beer bottle. "What's the matter, old man?" Scared, Marcus didn't speak. He simply watched, his breathing calm, his stance relaxed but balanced. In his mind, he wasn't on a dark street anymore. He was back on a training ground, dust in the air, wind slicing across the desert. His instincts hadn't dulled. They'd just been sleeping. The driver killed the engine. The sudden silence was heavier than the noise had been. Doors opened, slammed shut. Boots hit the pavement. The smell of alcohol drifted through the air. Marcus could hear every detail. The crunch of gravel, the nervous shifting of weight, the way one of them laughed a little too loudly to hide uncertainty. He knew that rhythm. The false courage that comes when a group convinces itself it's strong. He took one small step back, out of the glare of the headlights, so he could see their faces. They were young. Too young for hate that deep. One had a shaved head, another wore a torn jacket with patches on it, symbols Marcus recognized from the wrong kind of news stories. "You think you can walk through our neighborhood like you own it?" one said, stepping closer. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't look away, either. Silence, he'd learned, could be its own kind of power. The tallest one, the driver, took another step forward, puffing out his chest. "You got nothing to say." Marcus's voice, when it came, was quiet. "Go home." The words weren't loud, but they carried. The calmness in them seemed to unsettle the group more than anger would have. They laughed again, forced, brittle. One of them picked up a shard of the broken bottle and tossed it from hand to hand, trying to look dangerous. Marcus's mind stayed still, detached, observing. He measured distance. 5 meters, maybe less. The nearest streetlight flickered once. He could already see how it would go if it came to that. Not out of arrogance, but habit. Years of training had rewired the way he saw conflict. Not emotion first, but angles, balance, timing. He didn't want a fight. He wanted to go home, put away the groceries, maybe make tea before bed. But he could feel it. This would not end with words. The air around them had shifted, thickened with something volatile and unthinking. He looked at the smallest one, the nervous one whose laughter came half a second too late each time. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. Marcus saw a flicker there, uncertainty, maybe even regret. It gave him hope that this could still end quietly. Then the driver spat on the ground and muttered something low. The others shifted forward. Marcus exhaled slowly, like a man preparing for rain. The first one lunged at him, fast but reckless, telegraphing every movement with the tension of his shoulders. Marcus didn't move until the swing was already halfway there. Then he stepped aside, just enough for the man's fist to cut through empty air, and placed one firm palm against his back, redirecting his momentum. The man stumbled forward and hit the hood of the truck with a dull thud. The sound echoed in the still night. The others froze for a split second, caught off guard by how little effort it had taken. Marcus stood calmly, hands loose at his sides, breathing even. His stance was relaxed, almost casual, but his eyes never left them. He had been in dozens of situations like this before, different places, different faces, same kind of tension. And the same kind of fear, though none of them would ever admit it. "Get him," someone shouted, and suddenly the quiet street exploded into motion. Two of them came at him together this time, one from the front, the other from his right. Marcus shifted his weight, his body remembering what to do long before his mind needed to. He blocked the first swing with his forearm, redirecting it downward, and struck once, just a short, efficient jab to the ribs that knocked the air out of his attacker. The second tried to grab him from behind, but Marcus dropped low, pivoted, and sent the man sprawling over his shoulder. The impact rattled through the pavement. They weren't trained fighters. They were boys chasing power they didn't understand, looking for someone to make them feel strong. But Marcus didn't feel anger, only a quiet, steady disappointment. He'd seen this before. Rage taught by ignorance, passed down like a family heirloom. "Stop now," Marcus said again, his tone unchanged. None of them listened. The driver, the one who'd spat earlier, pulled something from his jacket pocket, a short chain, glinting faintly under the light. He swung it lazily, trying to look confident. "Think you're some kind of tough guy," he said. "You don't know who you're messing with." Marcus looked at him steadily. "Neither do you." The driver took a step forward, then another. His shoulders were tense, but his hands shook slightly as he lifted the chain. Marcus saw the hesitation, fear masked as defiance. When the man finally swung, Marcus moved before the chain could reach him. He caught the man's wrist mid-air, twisted lightly, and guided the motion downward. The chain fell from his grasp and clattered onto the asphalt. Marcus's other hand pushed the man back, not hard, but with enough force to send him off balance. "Go home," Marcus repeated. "This doesn't have to go any further." For a moment, it seemed like they might listen. The smallest one, barely more than a teenager, took a hesitant step backward. His eyes darted from Marcus to his friends. He looked scared now, not of Marcus, but of the situation itself, the realization that it had gone too far. But the driver wouldn't let it go. Pride was louder than reason. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and snarled, "You think you can come here, talk down to us? You think you're better than us?" Marcus's reply came quietly, "I think you're making a mistake." The driver lunged again, and Marcus sidestepped, hooking his arm and using his own momentum to bring him down. This time, he held him there, face down on the cold pavement, one arm pinned just firmly enough to remind him of control without causing real harm. "You're done," Marcus said softly. "Call your friends off." The man struggled for a moment, then stopped. The others hovered uncertainly, their earlier bravado evaporating into the night air. No one moved. No one spoke. Marcus stood slowly and stepped back, giving them room. "No one's hurt. You can still walk away," he said. His voice carried authority, not the kind that shouted, but the kind that made others listen. The smallest one nodded first. "Let's just go," he muttered. His voice cracked a little. The driver sat up, rubbing his wrist, eyes burning with a mix of humiliation and something like confusion. He'd expected resistance, maybe even rage, but not this. Not control, not restraint. Marcus picked up his grocery bag from the curb. The milk carton had survived, though the bread was crushed at one corner. He dusted it off, checked for tears, and looked back at them once more. "You don't want to do this again," he said. The driver didn't answer. His pride wouldn't let him. But none of them followed as Marcus turned and began walking away. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was shock. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, when everyone realizes how close it came to breaking something that couldn't be fixed. Marcus could feel their eyes on his back, but he didn't look over his shoulder. His pulse had already slowed, his breathing steady. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even satisfied. He felt only the faint weight of sadness, knowing how easy it could have gone differently if he'd been someone else, or if they had. When he reached the corner, he glanced once more at the reflection in a darkened window. 4 young men standing awkwardly in the street, the truck idling behind them, their confidence leaking out like air from a punctured tire. He adjusted the grocery bag under his arm and walked on, the night closing behind him, quiet once more. The aftermath of the confrontation left the street quieter than it had been in years, though it was the kind of quiet that carried weight. Marcus walked slowly, each step measured, letting the adrenaline fade into a steady, controlled calm. The hum of the streetlights overhead, once faint and ordinary, seemed almost serene now, a strange contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. The truck had pulled away, its occupants shaken, silent, their earlier aggression replaced by confusion and embarrassment. Marcus could feel the lingering tension in the air, thick and tangible, but it no longer touched him. When the police finally arrived, summoned by a neighbor who had witnessed the incident from across the street, Marcus stood on the sidewalk, holding the groceries in one hand, his other resting casually at his side. The officers approached cautiously, reading the scene with the practiced eyes of people trained to expect violence. "Sir, are you all right?" one of them asked, glancing at the uneven pavement and the faint dents in the truck. "Yes," Marcus said, "no one is hurt, they just need to think twice before they make the same mistake again." The officer nodded, skeptical but attentive. "Do you need medical attention?" Marcus shook his head. "I'll be fine." He handed over the security footage from a nearby shop that had captured everything. The officer watched the small screen, eyes widening slightly as Marcus explained the sequence of events, from the first taunt to the final, controlled takedown. "They'll learn something from this," the officer muttered under his breath, his tone part admiration, part disbelief. Marcus didn't reply. There was no need. He knew that lessons were learned in ways no words could enforce. Some things, like respect and restraint, only became real when experienced firsthand. Later, as he walked the last few blocks to his small, modest home, he could feel the weight of the night beginning to lift. The groceries, once a simple errand, had become the backdrop for something much larger, an unintentional test of character, both his own and theirs. He could hear the distant sound of the city, faint and alive, and it felt almost comforting, grounding him in normalcy after the tension. As he approached his door, the sound of hesitant footsteps made him glance up. One of the young men from the street stood there, nursing a bruised wrist and a shaken expression. It was the smallest one, the nervous boy whose laughter had faltered during the confrontation. Can I ask you something?" The young man stammered, his voice tinged with fear and curiosity. Marcus regarded him calmly, adjusting the grocery bag under his arm. "Go ahead. Why didn't you finish it?" he asked, the question more of an observation than a challenge. His eyes were wide, searching, as though he expected anger, punishment, or at least some form of retaliation. Marcus sighed softly, a quiet exhale that seemed to carry years of experience in it. "Because strength isn't about destruction," he said. "It's about knowing when not to use it. You learned that tonight, whether you realized it or not. You learned that power without control is meaningless." The boy nodded slowly, absorbing the words. It was a lot to take in, the realization that the man they had tried to intimidate, the man who could have hurt them easily, had chosen restraint. He had seen it firsthand and felt the humbling effect of it. Marcus's calmness, his control, his ability to act without malice, it was a lesson they hadn't expected to receive in the form of an encounter on a dark street. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet hung between them like a tangible thing, filled with unspoken acknowledgement. Then the young man took a step back, almost reluctantly, as if he wanted to retreat but also wanted to carry the lesson with him. "Thank you," he said quietly. Marcus nodded once. "Go home, and think about what you just experienced. It's worth more than a fight." The boy turned and walked away slowly, casting glances over his shoulder, still processing the weight of the night. Marcus watched him go, then turned back to his front door. He unlocked it, stepped inside, and set the groceries on the kitchen counter, the mundane task grounding him further. He unpacked the milk, the bread, The eggs, each item a reminder that life continued, even after moments of unexpected intensity. He filled the kettle, the whistle of steam soon rising to fill the quiet apartment. The tea would be warm, the night would continue, and the world outside would slowly return to normal. Sitting down at the small kitchen table, Marcus allowed himself a brief smile. He thought about the young men on the street, about how one encounter could shift perspective, about how control and restraint often spoke louder than fists or fear. He had done nothing extraordinary, only what he knew to be right, but in doing so, he had left an impression that might stay with them for a long time. And for the first time that night, Marcus truly felt at peace. The street, the confrontation, the lessons, it all belonged behind him now. Outside, the city continued its low hum, and inside, he allowed himself the quiet satisfaction of knowing that tonight, he had acted not just with strength, but with wisdom.